Hi, on this episode of Things That Matter, I interview Scott Cunningham, the worship pastor here at Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, and the director of our School of Worship. And we're having a conversation just about what's happening here with the worship ministry and what the Lord is doing out beyond here. So stay tuned. Hi, and welcome to this episode of Things That Matter. I'm Brian Broderson, and I'm in the studio today with my good friend and longtime ministry colleague, Scott Cunningham. Scott, great to have you.
Thanks, Brian. Great to be here with you.
Scott is the worship pastor here at Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, and he's also the director of our School of Worship. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But, we do have quite a long history together.
We do. It goes back many years. My first experience in ministry was Calvary Vista. You hired me on staff. I was newly married.
Yes.
And you were hiring actually me and my wife at the time, Megan, and she was replacing someone that was pregnant. And 3 days later, we found out that we were pregnant with our first, with Madison.
Right.
And I remember saying, "So, Brian, good news and bad news. My wife is pregnant."
Yeah.
And you're like, "You ready to be a dad?" And I said, I don't know. He's like, "The Lord will make you ready. He gives you 9 months." And brought a lot of comfort to me at that point.
Yeah. But my memories of you go back to when you were like 10 or 11, running around this place.
True.
Kind of being a wild kid. So.
Yes.
And you've slightly calmed down since then. But so anyway, I thought it would be fun to just sit down and chat and talk about, of course, talk about worship. But I want to talk about our School of Worship as well.
Yeah.
And then kind of, finally, I wanted to just talk about sort of the bigger vision, that I think just from watching you and conversations that we have, God's expanding your vision when it comes to worship. And, for both of us, I think we're both in a place in life and ministry where, the Lord seems to be broadening our perspective on things, our relationships with the people in the body of Christ. And it's a good season, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, it's such an exciting season.
Yeah. But let's talk first about, you've yourself, you have recorded a number of your own worship records over the years. About a year and a half ago or so, we did a project, a hymns project, with our team, our whole Calvary Creative team. And now you guys are just in the process of working on a new EP.
Yeah, we just finished a 6-song EP that 6 new songs that we've been working on for the last year. And this would be like the 4th project that we've done, or that I've done personally, but the first project that I've done inside of Calvary Creative this time. So it's really exciting. I felt like this specific project kind of comes on the heels of we've done a number of EPs, one with the Wildwood guys from Calvary Wildwood, and one of our guys, Corey Emery.
Right.
We did the Monuments Project, and so this being kind of in that same vein, just with the heart and desire to get new music out, record and capture new music and get that out and encourage the body through that.
But the Monuments Project was, it was just taking hymns and then reproducing hymns, right?
Exactly.
With different artists. Yeah. So this is actually back to you're writing songs, you're collaborating with others, and that's what this EP consists of, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we're calling it Steadfast Love, and we last summer actually, when we were traveling to England, I was started writing the song. I was reading through Psalms, and we've been singing it at church the last year.
It's a good song.
And it was reading through the ESV, and typically I've been in New King James for most of my life.
Yeah.
And so reading through the Psalms in ESV, that word steadfast love was all the way through the book of Psalms, and kind of hitting me in a fresh way. It's the word replacement for loving kindness.
Yeah.
And so in that phrase, steadfast love, I remember that old song, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases.
Right, yeah.
His mercy never comes to an end. So it kind of hit me in a new way, just reading it in the ESV, that God's steadfast love, it's just constant, unchanging, faithful love towards us. So anyway, started writing that song, and then wrote like a poem on the way to England on the plane, and that turned into a song that was called "Christ Completes What He's Begun."
I remember reading the lyrics to that. Yeah, that's a great lyrics.
It's kind of a Lord of the Rings trilogy journey. It's really long.
It's really long.
So.
I kind of thought of it as a Keith Getty sort of a, like a modern hymn. Because of the length of it.
It's long, and it's kind of like the song form is really different. It's not like your typical verse chorus. So that's the last song on the project. But we had a choice: either make it like kind of shove it into a typical song form, or let it be kind of what it was. So we kind of let that live, and just wanted to say everything we wanted to say in that promise of Philippians 1, that he completes what he's begun in us. So anyway, that song, and I wrote another song in England called "As the Heavens Are High." And so this last year school worship happens from September to May, and so we're always very just busy with that, with the worship ministry, think of Easter and everything else going on. And so summer is kind of the little window we have to kind of for me to be a little bit more creative and write and stuff.
For a few weeks anyway, until you hit the road and go all over like we're about to do here real soon.
Exactly, So I thought, okay, we have a little window. I felt like the Lord's given us some good songs. Let's just go for it and take a week and capture them. And then really the month of June. So we just wrapped that up and sent it off today to manufacturing.
Okay,
it's exciting.
So everything, because you had sent me some of the mixes and some of the stuff that you were kind of finalizing, the final touches. So
it's kind of that process, getting our kind of final thoughts on it.
Cool.
This one was fun too, because this year we did a conference called Carry the Name, and I had been listening to a study, and that kind of theme kind of popped out, feeling like, that's really what we are as worship leaders. We get a chance to carry the name of Christ, to sing the name, to put God on full display through the songs we sing and the lyrics we sing and stuff. So it comes from that. I think it's Acts 9 where Paul said the Lord was saying to Ananias, Paul's my chosen vessel to bear my name. You know, so that kind of song came from that. Our conference was called Carry the Name, and so in the process of writing it last fall, I remember just we had become friends with Paul Baloche over the last number of years, having him out at some conferences, and so I just shot him the chorus, said, hey, what do you think? We're having a conference coming up. It's called Carry the Name. Going to try to write a song for it, and he wrote back in like a voice memo. He's like, I'm in New York in a taxi cab, and this is what I'm hearing right now. And, he just sings it into his phone and shoots me back the idea. And so I was like, oh man, that's great. So we had a chance to kind of co-write that a little bit from a distance. And so we were working on that. We shared at the conference, and I had a bridge for it that was really long. And so fast forward into the spring, we've had a chance to get to know Matt Redman a little bit this last year. He's been using the studio, and just such a sweet guy as well. And he was around, and so I kind of just said, hey, this song we were working on, and I kind of showed it to him, and he goes, oh, it's good. He goes, if I were you, he goes, if it was me, I would just shorten that bridge. I would do something like this. He sings it. Like, that sounds great. I think that's what it should be. So it was really kind of this unintentional, really, like, to me, like a highlight of my life, up to this point, co-writing a little bit with those guys. And and afterwards, I just said, hey, I'm so thankful to chance to write with you. If you would want to be a part of that officially, I would love that. Obviously, it's more of a blessing to me than it would be for you. But and they both said, no, we would love that. We're so super excited.
That's so great.
So that was pretty cool.
Awesome. That's awesome. Okay, so School of Worship. School of Worship, man, I'll tell you, I love it. And of course, one of the great benefits that we get from it is that they come in and they're part of our worship team during the year, and of course you guys come in with the whole, background with the choir and everything, and the church just goes wild. They just absolutely love that. But just in a couple minutes, just share, maybe just a quick history of the school, but kind of just, what it is, what the vision is for it.
Yeah, it started 15 years. We've been doing it 15 years.
15 years?
This will be our 16th year coming up.
How can that be?
I don't know. It's crazy. Well, we came in 2017, so it was like right after that. And so when we came, obviously you invited us to come and pray about it. Everything just like changed for us. I remember leaving Orange County thinking I never want to move back.
Yeah.
I'd met my wife, who's from Washington, and thought the Lord would maybe lead us that way at some point. But the Lord leading us to Vista, you go into England, coming back to Costa Mesa full circle. When you asked us to pray about it, we just had this burden, coming back.
Yeah.
So coming back, working with Joey Buran, Worship Generation, the history of it really for me is through Worship Generation and through the ministry that we were doing with young people. There's all these young guys that had a heart to serve the Lord, guys that were musical, that wanted to lead worship and could see the growing need in the churches for that.
Yeah.
Servant-hearted, Spirit-filled, gifted guys that had something to give and to offer to the local church. So there wasn't a lot of training for that back in the day. So I remember one night, I had this dream, like a vivid dream of doing a camp up in the mountains for a week, and just having like a worship leader camp for young guys through Worship Generation. And I shared it the next day with Joey. I shared it with a friend of mine, Brian Nixon, who was on staff with us back in the day. And Brian was like, well, what about doing like a school of worship? And in my mind, I was thinking a week of like Bible teachers and musicians, guys like Danny Donnelly coming up, and we can just like pour into these young guys and train them. And Brian said, school of worship, what about a school of worship? And my honest thoughts were, what would we do for a year? Well, how could we fill that, that time for a year? So we started talking about it, and the different Bible classes we could teach, and music classes we could teach, and principles of ministry, and just the hands-on stuff from songwriting to practically leading, and all the different positions in a team. And we were easily able to fill out that year, when we took that kind of school of ministry kind of model, 15 hours a week, and so anyway, that we launched that first year with 11 students, and it kind of built. I think Joseph Tata was one of the first. Lindsay Scar, Lindsay Gatlin was one of the first students there that year. We just had a wonderful class, and it just felt like every year the Lord was building that school, the program. So new teachers were coming alongside. We had new musicians and worship leaders that had a heart to serve and teach in that way too. So we just, the Lord was just blessing it. So every year it kind of grew. Yeah. Like right now we're averaging about 65, 70 students every year right now.
That is amazing.
Just a miracle.
Yeah. Yeah. And back in those early days, but going back to the Worship Generation connection, a lot of guys came through that. A lot of great music came out of it. Yeah. Really, Phil Wickham, Jeremy Camp. I mean, those were some of the earliest guys that were involved with that.
Exactly.
And of course, they've gone on. I mean, they're the household names now, right? But
yeah.
But now, you guys are just continuing to develop the school of worship, and it's not any longer just kind of exclusively, if you play an instrument, come and but you've expanded over into media, you've expanded over into video,
right?
Teaching guys how to do sound recording, all kinds of things, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, you see the growing need for guys that have those gifts, those skill sets of technology, with all those different areas. The growing need in the local church for guys that can mix well and understand technology in that way. So we feel like we can still train them biblically, but also train them in a very practical way. Guys on our staff that are very gifted in those areas. So we kind of expand out a little bit.
And it's a good combination of, in some ways it's kind of a Bible college because you're getting a lot of great teaching. Yes. And not just on the subject of worship. I mean, you're just getting some good solid foundational stuff. My involvement's always been to do something kind of a little more theological, like on the attributes of God or something like that. And man, that just gives such a good foundation, for the students. Okay, I want to shift in and kind of just finish out our conversation with talking about what I said in the beginning with just kind of the bigger picture of what's happening. You mentioned Paul, you mentioned Matt. And the Lord's kind of opening some doors, and you've been places, and you've kind of met with some different people, and it just seems like there's some really great collaboration happening, and just some good relationships that the Lord seems to be cultivating and developing. And of course, with our festival that we do annually in the UK, we've had everybody under the sun practically come through that festival and do music, and we've kind of had some relationships develop from there. And so what are you thinking as you are sitting here right now? You're thinking about the future with everything we're doing here and kind of what you feel like the Lord's doing just in a general sense. What is your sort of vision or feeling for where things are headed.
Yeah, I think that's what the Lord's been doing in us the last number of years, is just really expanding our heart to see what God's doing in the global church, His kingdom as a whole. And I think missions has done a lot for me in that, just partnering together as we go overseas and see God working in these different contexts. Have sparked relationship, but also given greater vision for how the Lord might want to work in our local fellowship of churches, in Calvary Chapel. So Calvary Creative, when we've been transitioning in this last 3 years, and with new vision, new heart, kind of our prayer from the beginning was, Lord, what's our mission? What's our vision in underneath the overall vision of our church and where we're headed? And so for Calvary Creative was like kind of an umbrella name under which we would do lead worship. So our three things, basically, Calvary Creative is designed, or just there with our mission of leading worship, training worship leaders, and resourcing the church with new songs. Like that would be like kind of our threefold, focus. So our main focus is to obviously lead Spirit-filled, just Christ honoring worship in our local fellowship at Calvary Costa Mesa, raise up worship leaders, encourage guys in that. Training worship leaders would fall in the School of Worship would fall underneath that category. Our two conferences that we do, the one in Marietta, Calvary Chapel Worship Leaders Conference, is every November. Our Pure Worship Conference is more towards youth, a one-day event in the spring. And so, and then the resourcing the church with new songs, our third area would be the studio and kind of the Calvary Creative brand as far as putting new music out. And there's so many wonderful worship leaders, gifted songwriters in our fellowship of churches, and even and right outside of that as well, with relationships that we've gotten to know over the years. So I get very excited about just being inclusive and involving guys that just are, great examples that encourage our next generation of young guys to serve the Lord with their gifts. So very excited about that.
What is exciting to me, because we've got this this good mix of kind of an older generation of worship leaders, and you're kind of getting to be in that now.
Yes.
As you're getting older.
That's right.
And then we got the younger generation that's coming up, and there's good collaboration happening with both of those things, and I think that's really, really great. I think of like Interline, and I think of Drew and Melanie, and just the fresh, great, they're younger, and Melanie's got all that passion, and that's so good. And then I think of James and Rebecca Kijiji. James and Rebecca, of course, have been they've been part of the foundational worship ministry, here at Vista with us, in England with us for years, and their maturity, and to just that, it's just such a good combination. And then I am super excited about the relationship we've developed with Paul, for example, Brenton Brown. We haven't seen Brenton for a while, but great connection with Brenton, and then the more recent development of the relationship with Matt has just been fabulous.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of it all, right? Is just that diversity, and I think for us in this season, just getting to know some of these guys, and those guys are in so many different contexts of the church too. They're in every different variety of churches and denominations, and they handle themselves so well with so much wisdom, and they just keep the main thing. Keep it about Jesus. And so having those guys, that their influence on our lives and speaking into our lives, as well as the older and younger, I think it's such a sweet, healthy season. I'm really loving it a lot.
Yeah, and then just to throw Phil's name in there. Phil has collaborated with all of those guys as well, and then that's kind of our immediate family sort of connecting with those other families, and that's just been a great thing. And Phil and Evan both,
Yeah, they're really part of the Calvary family from the beginning.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Well, good. It's exciting. I'm looking forward to that new EP, and this program will probably air in a month, so maybe it'll even be out by then. So what's it called again? Your
Steadfast Love. I think it's going to be it's kind of the running theme throughout the project. So we're going to call it that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us for this episode of Things That Matter. Hope you have been blessed by this conversation, and hope the Lord's just encouraging you in your life and ministry through these interviews. and get the word out, spread it around social media and so forth. And we'll look forward to coming back around to another interview here real soon. So until then, God bless you.